The Laughing Warriors. Far away from Earth, in the cold and burning skies of the galaxy, there was a planet called Varelia. It was not a soft place. Its ground was sharp. Its animals were wild. And its people, especially the women, were trained to fight from the day they could walk. The women of Varelia were not like humans. They stood taller than most Earth men. Their muscles were made from years of battle. Their minds were cold and sharp. For them, feelings were weakness. Smiles were rare. Laughter, even rarer. But when it came to humans, especially Earth men, they couldn't help but laugh. Earth men cry over broken hearts, said Commander Rin, leader of the elite Virelian warrior squad. They cry over bad weather, another joked. They have machines for everything, even opening jars. The group of 5 alien warrior women laughed, a cold, mocking sound. They had been sent to Earth on a simple observation mission. No fighting, no contact, just watch and report. Their ship stayed hidden above Earth's desert lands, invisible to all radar. At night, they moved like ghosts, scanning and watching military bases and cities. To them, Earth was soft, its people slow, its men emotional and lazy. But everything changed one night. It was past midnight. The desert was quiet. The sky was clear. The Varelians stood on a cliff, watching a military training base below. Soldiers were running drills. Some were strong, but none looked special. Then something strange happened. An alarm went off inside the Virelian scanner. Something was moving far from the base. Not human, not animal. Big, dangerous, fast. The scanner showed a single human nearby, alone in the desert, walking with a flashlight and a backpack. "Why is he out there alone?" asked Laika, the youngest of the warriors. "Maybe he's lost," Rin said. "Let's watch. This could be amusing." They zoomed the image. The man looked rugged. Mid-30s, dust-covered clothes, scar on his cheek, calm eyes. His name flashed on their screen. James Cole. Suddenly, the sand near him exploded. A creature burst out, 8 feet tall, with glowing red eyes, sharp arms, and acid dripping from its mouth. It was a genetic mutant, a lab test gone wrong that had escaped days ago. Even the military was scared of it. The Varelians leaned forward. Surely this human would run. But he didn't. James dropped his bag and pulled a knife. Just a knife. No armor. No backup. No fear. He circled the beast, talking to himself. "Okay, big guy. Let's dance." The creature roared and attacked. James dodged, rolled, and stabbed its leg. He took hits, deep cuts on his arm, but kept moving. "Why doesn't he run?" Laika asked. "He's fighting smart," said Rin, eyes narrowing. The beast knocked James down. Blood hit the sand. The warriors thought it was over. But James got up. He pulled a flare from his bag and lit it. The light blinded the creature. Then he threw a homemade bomb into its mouth, a simple mix of oil and spark powder. Boom! The creature dropped, burning from the inside. James fell to his knees, breathing hard. The Varelians were silent. "That was not weak," whispered Laika. "He used his brain, his courage, not just strength," said Rin. They watched as James stitched his own wound with a needle and thread from his bag. No scream, no cry, just calm hands. Commander Rin felt something strange in her chest. Not fear, not anger. Respect. "Maybe Earth men are not as soft as we thought," she said. The warriors looked at her in surprise. Rin never changed her mind, never praised anyone. But that night, under the desert moon, they saw something that shook their beliefs. And they didn't know it yet. This was only the beginning. The man called James. The desert winds howled around him, but James Cole didn't care. His hands were covered in blood, his own, and his shirt was torn, hanging like a flag of battle. The body of the creature he had just killed lay behind him, still burning from the inside. Smoke rose into the night sky, disappearing into the stars. He stitched his wound slowly, quietly, like he had done it 100 times before. No shouting, no drama, just focus. From a cliff far above, the Virelian warrior women still watched in silence. Commander Rin narrowed her glowing blue eyes. She wasn't smiling anymore. "This man," she said slowly, "is different." The others said nothing. In Virelian culture, it was shameful to admit a human could impress them. But the truth was written on all their faces. James Cole was not like the others. He was strong, yes, but not like them. His strength came from somewhere deeper. A quiet fire. A storm behind calm eyes. The next day, James walked back to his cabin. Alone, as always. It was hidden deep in the desert, made from stone, steel, and old military parts. Solar panels powered his tools. Books were stacked on shelves. Maps covered the walls. He wasn't just a survivalist. He was a planner. A student of the wild. He lived where others feared to walk. Inside, he sat by the window, wrapping his wound properly. His eyes flicked to a small photo on the table. A woman and child. Smiling. Gone now. He didn't speak, but his jaw tightened. The past still lived in his heart, even if he never talked about it. Up in the sky, the Virelians had returned to their hidden ship. The interior was dark, filled with strange glowing panels and silent machines. Ren paced across the control deck. "We came to observe, to laugh, to prove Earthmen were weak," she said. "And now?" Laika asked. "Now, I want to test him." The others looked surprised. "You mean challenge him?" "No, I mean study him. Learn why he fights like that. What drives a man like that to take on a monster, alone, with no help?" "He's still just human," said another warrior. "Maybe," Rin said, "or maybe we've been wrong all along." She stared at Earth through the glass, her mind made up. The encounter. That evening, James was gathering wood near a dried-up river when he heard something behind him. A soft crunch in the sand. Too soft to be an animal. Too quiet to be human. He turned slowly, knife already in hand. She stood there, tall and calm, disguised in desert clothes, but her posture was perfect, her eyes sharp. "You don't look like a local," James said. Ren didn't smile. "Neither do you." He raised an eyebrow. "And you're not carrying a flashlight. You're either brave or reckless." "I could say the same." James said nothing more. He didn't trust strangers easily. "I've heard about you," she said. "James Cole, ex-Special Forces, vanished from the world 5 years ago." "I'm nobody," he replied. "Yet you fought that creature last night, like a soldier still at war." James shrugged. No one else was gonna stop it. Ren studied his face. His eyes were tired, but alert. There was no fear, just a steady storm waiting to rise. "I want to challenge you," she said. James blinked. "Excuse me." "A test of skill. No weapons, just strength and speed." James gave a small smile. "You're serious. Deadly." He looked her up and down. "All right then, but don't say I didn't warn you." The challenge. They cleared an area near the river. The moon lit the sand in silver. The wind was still. No audience, just man and warrior. Ren made the first move, fast, powerful, perfect form. James blocked, ducked, and moved back. She expected him to go down quickly. He didn't. He wasn't as strong, but he was smart. He used the ground, the angles, her speed against her. He took hits but never stopped moving. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. He was bleeding from the lip. She had a bruise on her shoulder. Ren had to admit it. This human was pushing her. And then, in a surprising move, James flipped her with a perfect leg sweep. She hit the ground with a thud. He stood over her, breathing hard. Still want to laugh at Earthmen. Rin looked up at him and smiled for the first time in years. The respect. James offered his hand. She took it. No words. Just mutual respect. He didn't ask who she really was, and she didn't tell. Not yet. That night, Rin sat alone on the Virelian ship. She looked at her report screen but didn't type. Instead, she whispered to herself, "What kind of planet creates men like that?" She didn't know that this question would soon become more important than anything else, because something else was coming. Something dark. Something that would soon put Earth and James Cole right in the middle of a galactic war. The hidden threat. The desert was quiet again. But silence does not always mean peace. James Cole sat by the window in his cabin, cleaning his knife with slow, careful strokes. His arm still hurt from the fight, but pain was an old friend. He didn't fear it anymore. He feared the things that hid behind silence, things that watched but never spoke. Something wasn't right. It started with small things. A drone he had set up 2 miles east suddenly went offline. A hawk that used to sit on the power line outside his home had disappeared. His dog, a stray mutt he had named Ghost, growled at the wind for no reason. James didn't ignore signs. He respected them. Unseen eyes. Up above Earth, beyond human reach, another ship floated in the dark. But this one didn't belong to the Virelians. It was long, black, and alive. Its surface moved like it was breathing. The Xarn, a secret and ancient race, had arrived in the solar system. They were not here to study, not to observe. They were here to judge, to test Earth's strength, and if Earth failed, to erase it. Inside the ship, the leader of the Xarn, called the Architect, watched James Cole through a screen. "He is stronger than expected," it said in a voice like cracking glass. "That man should not have survived the beast." Another voice replied from the shadows. "He is only one. The rest of his kind are weak. But one strong thread," said the Architect, "can hold together a whole cloth." The Virelian concern. Back on the hidden Virelian ship, Commander Rin stood before her squad. "We have a problem," she said. She brought up a hologram. It showed data from the creature James had killed. "That beast was not born on Earth," she said. "It was made. Its DNA contains traces of Xarn origin." Her warriors stared at the screen. "The Xarn," Laika said, voice tight. "They vanished centuries ago." "They didn't vanish," Rin said. "They went quiet. There's a difference." She turned to the window, eyes on the blue planet below. "If they're here, then Earth is in danger." "And James?" Laika asked. Rin's jaw tightened. "He's in the center of it. I can feel it. The tracks in the sand." 2 days later, James found tracks near an abandoned research site. The place had been closed for months. The fence rusted. No guards, no power, but someone had been there recently. He found large claw marks in the sand. Not animal, not machine. Something new. He crouched down, running a hand over the prints. Still fresh. Then he saw it, a small black shard half buried in the dirt. He picked it up. It was sharp and pulsing with a faint green glow. The material felt alive, like it was watching him. James stood quickly, eyes scanning the horizon. He wasn't alone. The shadows move. That night, James didn't sleep. He sat on his roof with binoculars, watching the hills. The wind was dead, too dead. Then he saw movement. 3 figures, moving fast, with no lights, no noise. He followed them. What he saw next changed everything. The figures entered a hidden cave. Inside were machines, not from Earth. Tall towers, liquid tanks, symbols glowing red and black. And at the center, a captured alien. Not a Xarn, not a human, a Virelian. It was Thera, one of Rin's warriors. She was chained, her body bruised but eyes still fierce. James didn't wait. The silent rescue. James returned home and packed quickly. No calls, no messages. He didn't trust anyone, not anymore. He built a soundless EMP device from spare parts, grabbed smoke bombs, and checked his gear twice. Then, under the cover of night, he moved. Like a ghost. He entered the cave from the side, crawling through a crack in the stone. Inside, the Xarn guards didn't see him. They didn't even sense him. Until it was too late. He dropped the EMP. Boom. The lights died. Smoke filled the room. James struck fast. One guard fell. Then another. He cut Thera free as alarm screamed. She stared at him. You? No time, he said. Can you walk? She nodded. They ran. Outside, they were followed. But James had set traps. Explosions lit the hills behind them. They didn't stop running until they were back at his cabin. The first real talk. Thera sat in James's chair, wrapping her wounds. James handed her water. You shouldn't be here, she said. You're not part of this war. I am now, James said. Who were they? The Xarn, she replied, voice low. They test planets before they destroy them. Earth is next. James leaned back. Why now? Because Earth is growing. Your kind is spreading. And your kind fights. James looked out the window. He remembered the wars he had fought, the friends he had lost, the people he couldn't save. Then we fight again, he said. The warning. In the sky, on the black Xarn ship, the architect watched the screen again. It showed James rescuing Thera, setting traps, escaping. The architect's claws tapped against the metal armrest. This human is a problem. A new voice, deeper and crueler, answered. Then remove him. No, said the architect. Let him live. Let him gather hope. It will make his fall more painful. It turned to another screen. A countdown had begun. 48 hours until Earth's final test. And James Cole didn't even know it yet. The rescue mission. The desert wind blew harder that night, as if the Earth itself sensed what was coming. Inside his cabin, James Cole stood over a table covered in maps, tools, and metal parts. Beside him, the alien warrior Thera sat quietly, still recovering from the pain of her capture. On the table was a sketch of the enemy base, deep inside a mountain, built by the Xarn in secret. It pulsed with alien energy. The facility wasn't just a base. It was a lab, a prison, and a command post for something darker. They're building something inside, Thera said. James nodded. I saw it. I've seen war machines before. This is worse. They are preparing for Earth's judgment, she added, voice heavy. Once ready, they'll launch. James placed a hand on the map. Then we take it down. Now. Thera stared at him. You would lead a rescue mission into an alien base with no army, no backup, and no reward. James didn't blink. I'm not looking for rewards. She watched him closely. Her people had laughed at men like him. Until now. Back in orbit. Commander Rin paced across the Virelian ship's control room. The screen showed James's cabin, zoomed in through a secret drone. He rescued Thera. Alone, said Laika, shaking her head. Not even our best scouts could enter that cave. And now he's planning a strike against the Xarn base, said another warrior. He's out of his mind. No, Rin said. He's ahead of us. She looked around at her team. Prepare to move. We're not leaving him alone this time. Laika blinked. You're going to follow his plan. No, Rin replied, her voice calm. I'm going to fight beside it. The team forms. That night, just before sunrise, a low hum passed through the desert. A small Virelian stealth shuttle landed quietly behind James's cabin. Rin stepped out first. Her armor shimmered under the stars. James stood waiting, arms crossed. Took you long enough. You're lucky I don't arrest you, Rin said with a smirk. For what? For making me admire a human. James grinned. Glad I could help. She stepped forward. You've seen the base. You've faced the enemy. You have the plan. So lead. He raised an eyebrow. You're serious. As death. James didn't waste time. The plan. Inside the cabin, James laid out the mission. We hit at dusk. Less patrols. More shadows. He pointed at weak spots in the mountain base. This is their power core. Hit it, and we blind them. He tapped a narrow tunnel. This is how I escaped. We use it to enter silently. Then he looked up at the Virelian warriors. I know you're stronger than me. Faster. But I've fought wars like this before. You're going to want to charge in. Don't. This time, we move like ghosts. Rin nodded slowly. Understood. Thera added, he's right. They know how to fight strength, but not strategy. James pointed at the center of the base. They're holding something in there. A weapon. Maybe worse. Laika asked, what if it's a trap? James smiled. Then we set one of our own. The infiltration. At dusk, the desert turned gold. Shadows stretched across the sand. The team moved out. James, Rin, Laika, Thera, and 2 more elite Virelians. No radios. No lights. Just silent steps and sharp eyes. The entrance tunnel was tighter than before. James crawled ahead, sweeping for traps. His heart beat slow and steady. He had done this 100 times before, but never with aliens behind him. Inside the base, the Karn were busy. Machines buzzed. Guards moved in patterns. No alarms. They had grown overconfident. Bad mistake. The attack. It began with a silent takedown. 2 guards dropped before they hit the floor. Then a timed EMP exploded in the generator room. Lights died. Panic followed. The Virelians moved like shadows. James planted charges on the fuel lines. Thera found the lab and gasped. Inside, humans were in stasis pods, dozens of them, wired to strange machines. They're testing humans, she whispered, studying fear, emotion, pain. James clenched his fists. We're stopping this now. Suddenly, the alarm rang. They had been spotted. The firefight. Guards flooded the halls. Red lights flashed. Sirens screamed. James shouted, fall back. Move to the central chamber. Blaster fire lit the tunnels. The Virelians fought with deadly skill, but the enemy was endless. James used traps, remote mines, smoke bombs, sonic disruptors. Every step back was a calculated move. Then, in the chamber, they saw it. The weapon. It looked like a giant egg made of living metal, pulsing with green light. A Xarn commander stood beside it. You are too late, it hissed. The judgment seed is complete. James stepped forward. Then let's ruin your day. He tossed a charge. Boom. The chamber shook. Fire burst from the walls. The seed cracked. The Xarn screamed. The team ran. The escape. Smoke followed them. The base collapsed behind their heels. Outside, the desert air felt like freedom. A second shuttle picked them up just before the mountain exploded. From the sky, they watched the base vanish into fire. The mission was done. Or so they thought. The warning still stands. Back aboard the Virelian ship, James sat across from Rin. You did more than we thought possible, she said. I did what needed to be done, he replied. But this was just one base, she warned. The Xarn have more. And they've seen your face. James leaned back in the chair. Then I hope they remember it. Rin stood. You're not just a fighter, James. You're a leader. Our people need someone like you. James looked at her, calm but firm. Then let's give them something to believe in. Deep in the stars, on the Xarn mothership, the architect stood in silence. It watched the screen showing the burning mountain. Then it turned to its army. Begin the final phase. Earth has shown teeth. Now, we will break them. A countdown began on the screen. 36 hours left. The war had just begun. The warriors change. The stars outside the Virelian ship shone like cold diamonds. From orbit, Earth looked peaceful, blue oceans, green land, and white clouds drifting like dreams. But down below, war was coming. Inside the command chamber, Commander Rin stood alone, staring through the thick glass. Her hands were behind her back, her posture perfect, as always, but her mind was not at ease. She had fought 100 battles across 10 worlds. She had defeated warlords, monsters, and traitors. But never before had someone changed her. And that someone was a human, the man they underestimated. James Cole stood in the ship's medical bay, shirt off, as a robotic arm stitched a deep gash across his ribs. He barely flinched. Nearby, Laika, one of the youngest Virelian warriors, watched in silence. "Does it hurt?" she finally asked. James gave a small shrug. "Pain tells me I'm still alive." Laika tilted her head. "You're strange." "So I've been told." She walked over. "When I first saw you, I thought you were weak. All of us did." James gave a dry smile. "Yeah, I got that feeling. But then I saw you bleed for one of us. I saw you fight when you could have run. You think before you strike, and you care about those you lead." She paused. No Virelian commander I've ever known would risk themselves like that. James looked at her, calm and honest. Leadership isn't about standing above others. It's about standing with them. Rin's conflict. Rin entered the training chamber later that day. It was empty, except for James, who was working silently with a blade, moving through slow, deliberate motions. "You fight like a dancer," she said. James didn't stop. "Funny. I always thought I fought like a man who's seen too much." Rin stepped closer. "Why didn't you join Earth's army when the Xarn appeared?" "I've seen what armies become when politics gets involved," he said. "They wait too long, talk too much, act too late. So you became a lone warrior." "No," James said. "I became someone who doesn't wait for permission to do what's right." Rin looked at him. Her voice dropped. "You've changed us, James." He turned to her. "No, you were always capable of change. You just needed a reason." Rin's gaze softened, just for a moment. "Maybe you are that reason." Message from Earth. A sharp beep echoed in the chamber. A message had come from Earth, coded, urgent. Rin played it on the screen. A general from Earth's global defense spoke, face pale and sweating. "Unidentified ships entering orbit over Asia, North America, and Africa. Not responding to hails. Civilian panic rising. Prepare for immediate ground conflict. We need help. We need it now." James stood up straight. "So it begins." Rin turned to him. "We'll help." James nodded. "Then let's give Earth the one thing it's always had." "What's that?" He looked at her, eyes full of fire. "Hope. Rallying the warriors." The Virelian ship was called the Emberfang, and for years it had carried cold warriors to countless war zones. It had never carried purpose, until now. In the Great Hall, Rin stood before her team, helmet under one arm. "We came to Earth to observe, to laugh, to prove we were better," she said. "But we were wrong." The warriors looked at her, confused. "Earth is not weak. Humanity is not soft. They are something we are not." She looked to James. "They have courage without reward, strength without pride. And when they fight, they do it not for glory, but for each other." She raised her voice. "I will no longer lead with distance. I will fight beside those who bleed. And if any of you cannot follow that path, then leave now." No one moved. Laika stepped forward. "We're with you." And with him. Rin nodded. "Then prepare. We leave for Earth in 1 hour." Earth prepares. Back on Earth, chaos had begun. Black clouds covered the skies over 3 continents. The Xarn ships hovered like giant predators. Civilians ran. Sirens wailed. World leaders issued panicked orders. And then, something unexpected happened. A Virelian shuttle dropped from the clouds above New Mexico. Soldiers raised weapons until they saw who stepped out. James Cole. Behind him marched Virelian warriors. The humans stared. And James spoke into the nearest camera. "This is not the end of Earth. This is the beginning of our fight back. We stand together now, human and alien. They came to test us. Let's make them regret it." The speech spread across the internet like wildfire. Children in shelters cheered. Soldiers raised their weapons higher. Hope returned to a frightened world. The battle line forms. James stood on a cliff above a wide desert plain. Below, Earth's forces gathered, tanks, drones, infantry, and beside them, for the first time in history, stood alien warriors in armor, blades on their backs, fire in their eyes. He looked across the field and saw it, a wall of black Xarn machines marching forward, covering the land like ants. Rin stepped up beside him. "You sure about this?" James smirked. "Never. But that never stopped me before." She looked at him. "What if we lose?" He looked down at his hands. Scared. Strong. "Then we lose fighting for something real." The moment before. As the sun set behind the mountains, the battlefield turned orange and gold. James walked down the line of human and Virelian soldiers. He didn't give orders. He gave presence. He stopped near a group of young Earth soldiers. They looked terrified. James knelt beside one of them. "You scared?" he asked. The soldier nodded. James smiled. "Good. That means your heart's working. Now make sure it keeps beating by standing your ground." He moved on. Laika walked beside him now. "You're not like the others." "I never was," James said. Final words before the storm. As night fell, Rin called her warriors together. "Tomorrow, we fight not just for Earth," she said, "but for the right to believe in something greater than pride. We fight because we've changed, and change is strength." James stepped up beside her. "Let's show the universe," he said, "what it means to be human." Above them, in the sky, the Xarn ships began to open. The final battle was about to begin. The final stand. The sky over Earth had changed. It was no longer blue. Black clouds of Tarn warships covered it like a ceiling of death. Their ships made no sound, no flames, no light, just darkness. Silence that felt heavier than war cries. Below them, across the open desert plains of New Mexico, thousands of Earth's defenders stood ready. Soldiers, tanks, drones, pilots in cockpits. Human technology hummed with life, facing something it had never seen before. Beside them stood the warriors of Virelia, tall, armored women with alien weapons, glowing eyes, and powerful calm. But today, for the first time, they were not alone. At the front of the line stood James Cole, a man, a human, and their leader, a quiet before the storm. James looked at the enemy lines through binoculars. The ground trembled softly. Something big was moving beneath it. "They're going to open with terror," said Commander Rin, standing beside him. "How do you know?" "It's what the Xarn do. They break your will before they break your body." James took a deep breath. "Then let's make sure our will doesn't crack." She looked at him. "You've become something more." James didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the shadow ahead. "Let's just make it through the day," he said. "The enemy reveals itself." Suddenly, the clouds broke open. Dozens of black dropships fell from the sky like meteors, landing with thunder. Massive Xarn war beasts poured out, biomechanical monsters with burning red eyes and metal limbs. Behind them came the foot soldiers, slim, tall creatures, armored in living metal, weapons grown from their own bodies. But worst of all was the sound. Not screams, not roars, just whispers, thousands of them, echoing, crawling into the ears of every human soldier. "You will fail. You are weak. "You are already dead." Young soldiers panicked. Some cried. Some dropped their weapons. James walked forward, stood on top of a small hill, and raised his voice. "I hear them too. But here's the truth. Fear only wins if you stop fighting." He pulled a flare from his belt and fired it straight into the sky. "Let's show them what Earth is made of." The battle begins. The first wave hit like a flood. Tsarn beasts charged with razor-sharp limbs. Human tanks opened fire. Explosions lit up the battlefield. Sand turned to fire. The air filled with smoke and screams. James moved like lightning, commanding groups, pulling injured soldiers to safety, firing shots with perfect aim. Beside him, Rin's blade cut through two Xarn warriors in one move. Laika jumped from a ledge, landing on a war beast and stabbing it through the skull. Still, the Xarn kept coming. Their numbers seemed endless. The turning point. A massive shadow fell over the field. The ground shook. Then, from underground, a colossus rose, a living Xarn weapon the size of a building, with arms that turned into cannons and legs that crushed tanks like tin cans. James cursed under his breath. They were hiding that thing. "Can we stop it?" Rin asked. "Not from the outside." James pulled a scanner from his belt. The creature's power source was inside its chest. "We need someone to go inside and shut it down." Laika looked at him. "How?" "There's a vent system on its back. But it's suicide." James turned to her, already walking. "Good thing I'm used to bad odds." The suicide run. Under cover of smoke, James ran through the chaos, dodging blasts, jumping over debris, and climbing a fallen structure to reach the beast's back. The creature swatted at him like an insect, but James moved fast, climbing, cutting, bleeding. He reached the vent and dropped inside. It was like crawling through a furnace. Heat burned his skin. The walls pulsed like muscle. Inside the core chamber, red light blinded him. The power cell was spinning fast. He pulled two explosive charges from his belt, one to disable, one to destroy. He set the timer. 3 minutes. Outside, holding the line. While James was inside the beast, Rin and the others fought harder than ever. She rallied both humans and Varelians. Protect his path. If James falls, Earth falls. Her warriors formed a wall around the beast, shielding it from attacks, giving James time. Human soldiers, inspired by her bravery, did the same. They fought shoulder to shoulder, alien and human, as if they had been allies forever. Inside the core, final moments. James connected the last wire. Beads of sweat ran down his face. Blood from a cut dripped into his eyes. 30 seconds left. He whispered to himself, "You've got one shot, Cole. Make it count." He turned and sprinted for the exit tunnel. Outside, Rin saw him burst from the back of the beast and jump down, landing hard. "Eat Dathki," he yelled. Then, boom! The giant creature exploded from the inside, falling backward in a ball of fire, crushing dozens of Tarn soldiers around it. The tide had turned. The push. With the Colossus gone, Earth's forces pushed forward. James led the charge. His body was on fire, but he didn't stop. The Varelians followed his roar. For Earth, they pushed the Xarn back, inch by inch, foot by foot. And then, retreat. The Xarn ships began to rise. The shadows pulled back. The whispers stopped. The battlefield fell into silence. Victory, for now. James stood in the center of the smoking field. Bodies were everywhere. Fire still burned, but they had done it. Rin walked to him. "You lived." He smiled weakly. Surprised. "Yes, but more than that. I'm proud." Laika joined them. The Xarn ran, but they'll be back. James nodded. "Next time, we'll be ready." Above Earth, final move. High above the planet, inside the Xarn mothership, The architect watched the battle feed end. Its red eyes narrowed. He is not like the others. This James Cole must be erased. A new creature was prepared, bigger, faster, more deadly than anything before. It would not speak. It would not test. It would only destroy. The architect looked down at Earth. Next time, there will be no survivors. Humanity, hell yeah. The Earth had survived its first real war with the stars. But peace had not come. Not yet. Across the battlefield in New Mexico, fires still burned. Smoke curled into the sky like warnings written in black ink. Bodies lay in the sand, human and alien. Machines sparked and hissed, and medics moved through rubble, pulling out the wounded. In the distance, the dark ships of the Xarn rose like ghosts. But they had not retreated in defeat. They had pulled back to strike harder. The last message. High above, aboard the Xarn mothership, the leader, the architect, stood before a growing creature locked in a tank of black liquid. This was not a soldier. It was an extinction weapon, grown from pain, programmed to kill, made for one purpose only, to wipe Earth clean. The architect stared at a screen showing James Cole, still alive. You inspire them. That ends today. A signal was sent. The ship descended through the clouds. The final judgment had begun. The calm before everything. Inside a ruined military hangar, James Cole stood with Commander Ryn and what remained of Earth's leaders. They had one chance left. We can't fight them again out here, said a general. We lost half our tanks. Ammunition's low. Troops are tired. They're sending something worse this time, Ryn added. It's not an army. It's a weapon. James looked at a blinking screen. A countdown had started. 11 hours. That's how long before the Xarn weapon landed. He turned to Ryn. We can't wait. We go to them. Her eyes widened. You mean board the mothership? Yes. We take the fight up there. End this. Suicide, said the general. James looked at him. So is waiting. Ryn nodded. We're with him. The strike team. 6 people. That's all they could send. James Cole, human. Ryn, Virelian commander. Laika, scout and blade expert. Thyra, demolitions. Dr. Mason, human tech genius. Surgeon Park, human sniper. The mission. Infiltrate the Xarn mothership, destroy the extinction weapon before it's deployed. The transport was fast, quiet, and almost invisible. They left Earth's atmosphere in under 10 minutes. As they rose through the clouds, James stared down at the world below. I never thought I'd die anywhere except in sand, he said. Laika smirked. You still might. James grinned, comforting. Inside the beast, the Xarn mothership was the size of a city. It didn't look like a ship. It looked alive. The walls pulsed. The air was wet. Doors opened like mouths. Lights blinked like eyes. The team landed in a quiet section of the underbelly and began moving through narrow tunnels, following the stolen layout. As they walked, Dr. Mason whispered, This place, it's thinking. It is, Ryn said. That's why we must destroy it fast, before it learns too much. Then they heard it, the heartbeat. Loud, slow, deep. It came from the core, where the weapon was growing. Ghosts and traps. As they moved deeper, traps began triggering. Toxic gas, shifting floors, moving walls. Park was almost crushed, but James pulled him out with one hand. Nice reflexes, Park breathed. Had to learn. My ex threw plates. Everyone chuckled, even Ryn. Then came the whispers again. This time louder. You are alone. You will lose. You are weak. James stopped, then shouted back, voice full of fire. No, we're human. The final door. They reached the central chamber. Inside was the extinction weapon, 10 stories tall, breathing like a monster. its skin made of metal and bone. Tubes fed it power. Its eyes were closed. But soon, they would open. The architect waited there too. "You came here to die," it said. James stepped forward. "No, we came here to make sure you do." The fight exploded. The final battle. Ren and Laika charged the guards, blades flashing, blood flying. Park sniped from above, covering Thera as she planted charges around the power core. Dr. Mason hacked the system, trying to stop the weapon from waking. James ran straight at the architect. They clashed, human grit versus alien fury. The architect hit hard. Too hard. Bones cracked. Blood spilled. But James never stopped. He took every hit and gave one back. Not with strength, but with will. The sacrifice. Dr. Mason screamed, "The system's too complex. I can't shut it down in time." James looked around. He saw the weapon twitching, waking. Then he made the choice. He pulled the last detonator from his belt. Looked at Rin. "Get them out." "No," she said, voice cracking. "We don't leave our own." James smiled. "I'm not Virelian, remember." "You're more than that," she said. "You're one of us." James turned to Mason. "Can you set the ship to crash into the sun?" Mason blinked. "Yes, but someone has to stay and guide it manually." James nodded. "Then that's me." "Goodbye." The team argued, shouted, refused. But James didn't budge. "Earth lives if I stay," he said. "That's enough for me." He hugged Laika, gripped Park's hand, nodded to Thera, then looked at Rin. "Tell them back home, not all heroes wear armor." She stepped forward, pressed her forehead to his. It was an honor. The final flight. The team escaped in the shuttle. James stayed behind. He walked to the pilot controls, set the course. The sun grew bigger in the window. He sat down, closed his eyes, and smiled. Earth watches the sky. All across Earth, people stared at screens. The Xarn mothership, once untouchable, was flying straight into the sun. Children cheered. Soldiers cried. And Rin, standing before the United Nations, spoke. "You once asked if Earth was strong. You are, because of men like James Cole. He did not fight for power. He fought for people. He made us believe." One last message. A final video played from James's cabin, recovered from his home. He looked into the camera, calm and steady. "If you're seeing this, I'm probably gone. But don't be sad. I did what I had to do. Not because I was a hero, but because I was human. We fall. We bleed. We cry. But when the moment comes, we stand." He smiled. Humanity. Hell yeah. The legend begins. Statues were built. Songs were sung. The alien warrior women who once laughed at Earth's men now told stories of the one who changed their hearts. Children across galaxies grew up hearing the name James Cole, not just as a man, but as a symbol of what it means to fight for others. The end.